There's a few common hazards that you're going to face on a typical route, so I thought I'd show you guys a route that I usually do, some of the hazards I face and how I deal with them. Some things I do well and some things not so well. Local knowledge helps, and I know there's a junction on the left here which that truck is trying to pull out of, and you can see him creeping forward. The best thing to do here is to reduce your speed and just try and make eye contact with the driver before you can really assess what he's about to do. This one's very similar. There's a black car sitting in the junction on the left. I think they call this an active junction, but you've got some trees and some lampposts blocking the driver's view, so it's very likely that they're going to pull out on you. I needed to take this left lane because the right one is a right turn only, but I just gave them a lot of space before doing that. Next up, there's a merge situation, and this is one that I don't think I handled particularly well. I was trying to leave a gap on the left for the black car to come past me, but by the time he did, he didn't really have enough space, so I turned my head left, made eye contact with the driver and decided to take the gap instead. I think I should have committed to taking the gap a little bit earlier when I saw that he wasn't going to come past right away. I'm going left on this roundabout. There's a bus in front of me. Big vehicles are going to cut across lanes when they take roundabouts in junctions, so don't get too close to them. I approached this roundabout way too quickly, assuming that it was going to be clear to go, and when I got there, it wasn't. I managed to stop the bike in time, but not before rolling over the giveaway. Generally, you don't want to speed up to junctions and then slam on the brakes. That's a good way to have the car behind you rear end you. Filtering's a great way to make progress and to save some time on your journey, but I did almost get myself into a pinch situation here. There's a big gap in front of that van, and I did manage to take it eventually, but if the van driver was a bit more aggressive and didn't let me merge, I would have been a bit stuck, so it's just something to be aware of. I love national speed limit roads, and I love to try and get around cars who are going a little bit slower in front of me, but you never want to overtake past a junction, and here's the reason why. That black car is turning left, and it's pretty much 90% guaranteed that they would have just checked to the right to make sure it's clear. They wouldn't have looked left to see if you were there. Also, once you've dealt with one hazard, refocus for the next one. If you saw there was a junction on the left there with another car trying to pull out, you want to always be switched on for that kind of thing. Again, local knowledge of these roads is really helpful. I know that around this corner there's a massive pothole. This is the kind of thing that you want to watch out for. It's right on the line that you want to take, but you don't want to just blindly commit to something. If the road surface is not good, then you need to adjust your ride to accommodate for that. I've hit that pothole at least 5 times, and it hurts my soul every single time. Same with bumps like this. Keep the bike upright, don't do anything crazy with the controls, and just accept the pain. Back into some town riding now, and you never want to just accelerate into a situation. Look at what's happening here. There's a white car trying to pull out on the right, a black car trying to pull out on the left, and another car waiting to turn right. You want to keep your speed low and be prepared for anyone to do something like this. Here's another example of a situation where you don't want to just commit to a line around this left-hand bend. This car cuts the corner by a fair bit. I would have been in trouble if I was there. Here's an interesting situation. It's a dead straight road, 40 miles an hour limit, and it goes on for about maybe 5 minutes. So what are the potential hazards on a really straight road like this? Well, one of the big ones is going to be you getting bored or the car behind you getting impatient. I've had people tailgate me on this road even though there's loads of space to just overtake. I don't really get it, but it's things to look out for. This roundabout messes with my brain every time, and I can't really figure out what I'm doing wrong. I think the roundabout's a bit of a weird shape. I just can't seem to turn around it in a very clean way. There was also loads of potholes on here. They've repaired them maybe a few months ago, so that's probably adding to the anxiety a little bit. Roundabouts can be pretty dangerous for motorcyclists. The driver on the left here doesn't even look right before pulling out, and the person in the convertible decides to go as well. With a low enough speed, it's a non-issue, but you really can't hoon it around these roundabouts. You never know what's going to be around the bend. Here's a pedestrian in the road. And again, whenever there's a car waiting to pull out, just make sure they've seen you first. National speed limit sign doesn't always mean whack the throttle open. This bridge has quite a few bumps on it, so you want to keep the bike upright. This is one of my favourite roads, and I thought I'd treat you to some footage of what it looks like going the other way when there's no traffic. The surface is a little bit better on this side of the road, and I find that there's usually a little bit less traffic as well. Bends that you can actually do 60 around make me very happy. You don't want to get too close to oncoming big vehicles, and the other thing you want to watch out for is if there's a car behind them trying to overtake. Big vehicles tend to move a little bit slower and people get a bit impatient, so just watch out for that. I used to love this part of the road on my 125 because it was actually a road that I could hit 60 down, and on a small bike it feels like you're literally flying. This lorry's parked just after a bend. I'm going to slow it down before passing it. Luckily there's plenty of space. And this is pretty much the same situation but in the reverse. Cars are going to want to pass that truck on the right. Luckily this road's quite wide, so I pull over to let them pass. If it's a bit narrower, you might want to take a more dominant position and put them off trying to do that. If you're a short rider like I am, you have to use all the terrain available to you to make your life as easy as possible when you're trying to ride. I find my bike a little bit easier to hold up when I'm on an uphill slope and very, very difficult to hold when I'm on a downhill slope. There's no cars behind me at this point, so I've just waited at the top of the bridge to save me struggling with the bike. It also increases your visibility because cars coming up behind you will be able to see you. It's not as important if you're in a queue of slow moving traffic, say, because the car behind you has probably seen you anyway. I'm stuck behind a queue of traffic here doing 30 45 miles an hour in a 60 miles an hour zone. It's actually quite impressive. It's definitely a queue of traffic that I want to try and get around, but they're quite bunched up, so you really have to pick your moments. Don't get frustrated, don't start making silly overtakes, it's just not worth the risk. I'm going to close the gap behind this van because I know that the road straightens out after this bend, and I'm going to try and go for an overtake here. I'm fairly happy with that, and I'm back in before the lay-by on the right. It actually ended up being a little bit pointless because I couldn't get around the other two cars. A little while up the road, the speed limit drops down to a 30 anyway. Don't zone out when you're stuck in traffic. You always want to keep that 360 awareness around you. Maybe there's a cyclist coming up around you or another motorcyclist. Another tip is to also look in the windows of the cars around you and try and see what kind of driver they are. This isn't to stereotype any individual, but you just want as much information as possible before you can make a move. For example, if you've got a young person in a really fast car, are they going to try and race you away from traffic lights? Probably, and you might decide you don't want to be near that car. Try and see if they're distracted too, if they're on their phone or if they're drinking a bottle of water or something, or if they're looking in their mirror adjusting their GoPro. It's all going to affect how they move away from the lights. Another merge situation here, you want to check your mirror to make sure there's nothing about to undertake you. I was already speeding by like 5 miles an hour in this 30 zone, so I'm not quite sure what the rush was, but it's just this kind of thing, I don't want to be near that. Sometimes egos get involved. I know I can twist the throttle and catch up to him and say, what was that about, I've got you on camera, but there's really no point. I'm not going to put my life at risk just to make a point. I'll never end up on Motorstars, but you know, price you pay. And finally, it's a little bit of silly filtering from me. I always try and get around big vehicles because they just move so slow, but in this case the traffic started to move. I didn't want to get caught there, so it was a little bit of a rush to get back in lane afterwards. And I was rewarded on this steaming hot day with being behind a bin lorry, which smelled disgusting, but that's my punishment for being impatient. So there you go, just some common hazards that you face and some things to think about when you see them. Really, motorcycling is the same 2 or 3 hazards over and over again. You just have to learn how to spot them and deal with them. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. Let me know if you have any other information in the comments, and safe riding, and I'll see you in the next one.